My name is Alexandra, and I am 28 years old, living in Sofia, Bulgaria. As I sit in my small, sunlit apartment, I find myself staring at the shadows that stretch across the walls, tracing the lines of my father's absence that have haunted my life. It has been nearly 5 years since I last heard his voice, but the echoes of his laughter still resonate within me, both a comfort and a torment. I can almost hear him say, "Stay strong, my little girl," though now those words feel more like a haunting reminder of dreams unfulfilled than a source of strength. The day he passed, I was torn apart in ways I never thought plausible. It was not merely the loss of my father that shattered me, but the barrage of betrayal I faced subsequently. He had been larger than life, a man with dreams that flung him across oceans, abandoning my twin brother and me in our small town in Bulgaria while he sought fame and fortune in America. Sometimes, I wonder how he could leave us, chasing a life without even glancing back. My childhood was marked by an unsettling emptiness as I watched, through the screen of a computer or the pages of an occasional letter, my half-brother dance in the limelight of our father's affection, his laughter echoing through the phone lines, while my heart sank a little more with every ringing tone. Their relationship felt like a specter hovering over every part of my existence, and it became a weight I carried far too long. Despite the complexities of our family, my twin had always been my rock. Together, we navigated the turbulence of adolescence, sharing our frustrations about our father's distance and our mother's silence regarding his decision. We were linked by an invisible thread of loss, a bond forged in the fires of abandonment. Yet, when our father died, everything I thought I understood about family became a battlefield. I remember that day vividly. My brother stared blankly at the ground, the shadows on his face mirroring the chaos brewing in my heart. I could see the confusion scrawled across his features, but the moment we received the news, an undercurrent of something sinister began to unfurl, growing in the silence. "It doesn't feel real," he muttered, staring down at the pavement as if it might offer us both some clarity. "Why did he never come back? Why leave us in the first place?" "Maybe he thought he was doing what was best for us," I suggested, though even as I said the words, I knew they rang hollow. What father leaves his children behind in the pursuit of personal desires? After the funeral, as the weight of grief hung in the damp summer air, our uncle appeared like a vulture circling over the carcass of our family. He had always been manipulative, wrapping his fingers around the fragile neck of our family's affairs, but now he seemed to relish our misfortunes. The way he tucked his hands into his pockets, smiling like he held the winning hand in a poker game, made my skin crawl. "Alexandra," he beckoned me over, his voice oozing with charm, yet I sensed an undercurrent of greed woven through his words. "We need to talk about your father's estate." My heart raced, and I found myself caught between the desire to flee and the instinct to protect what little remained of my father's legacy. "There's no need for hasty decisions," I said firmly, crossing my arms defensively. "We need to sort through everything first." "Oh, come now, dear," he replied, his tone a dangerous blend of condescension and urgency. "Chaos can be a wonderful thing when you know how to use it to your advantage. Think of the potential for us all. A shopping mall on the land could change everything. Your brother and I have already discussed it." "What?" I felt the world tilt on its axis, disbelief flooding my body, transforming into fury. "You expect us to give up our inheritance just like that? It belongs to us." He smiled, the satisfaction in his eyes a chilling contrast to the storm brewing inside of me. "Your brother seems to think otherwise. Perhaps it is time to let go of what's binding you. This is an opportunity." An opportunity. Those words twisted in my mind like a dagger digging deeper as I realized what they truly meant. I looked at my brother, who stood a few paces away, watching with wide, betraying eyes. We had a choice: remain passive and let the very fabric of our family be torn apart by greed, or take a stand, fueled by the love and memories of our father. The moment my brother stepped forward, a resigned expression across his face, every fear I had built up came crashing down in a single instant. "Alexandra, we have to think practically. We cannot hold on to what is long gone. The estate is just bricks and mortar. A shopping mall could turn into a life for us." "This is what Dad would have wanted. Is that what you think?" I interjected, unable to hold back the tidal wave of rage surging within me. "My father wanted us to be united. He would never have wanted this." My heartbeat thundered in my ears as a heated argument erupted between us and our uncle. It was a dance balancing grief with betrayal, anger with desperation, spiraling into chaos as my brother and I clashed. Every word felt like an attack, every silence thick with unspoken resentment, and I felt caught in a storm that I had never foresaw. I am not going to sit back and let you two destroy what little remains of our family legacy, I shouted, my voice raw and thick with emotion. You don't get to decide what our father wanted. You are his son, too. Don't you see what you are doing? I do see, Alexandra, he replied, his voice growing louder, fiercer. But you are blinded by past hurts. You can't just cling to nostalgia. This is reality. Reality. The word hung in the air like a toxic mist. I could hardly breathe as the walls around me began to crash down. What was left of my family felt like a fragile glass ornament teetering on the edge of a table. My uncle's smirk only exacerbated my anger, and I could feel the switch inside of me flip, a quiet resolve igniting, burning fiercely. No! I shouted again, feeling adrenaline surge through my limbs while my thoughts raced furiously. I will not let you or anyone take what is ours. I will fight for this, for our father's legacy, for everything he stood for. You think you can just bully us out of what is rightfully ours? I will not allow it. We can take this to court. I will not be silenced. My brother's face shifted, confusion mixing with a hint of regret. It was a fleeting expression that disappeared almost instantly, but for a moment, I could glimpse the child who once sat beside me in the living room, poring over old photo albums of our father's smile. What do you think you will accomplish, Alexandra? He hissed, stepping closer, contempt dripping from his tone. You're just one person. You are fighting a losing battle. In that case, I would rather lose fighting than win without a fight, I shot back, my voice unwavering. Mediocrity may satisfy you, but I am capable of standing up for myself. I will solve this, whatever it takes. My uncle's laughter sliced through the tension like glass shattering. Is this the final act of defiance? Very well then, fight your little fight. I am more than prepared for the war that is to come. An icy chill enveloped me, and for a moment I felt utterly alone on this battlefield. But deep down I heard my father's voice again, a whisper urging me onward. Stay strong. I looked at my brother one last time, and a spark of determination flickered within me, igniting the fire that could no longer be quenched. As they turned away, plotting their next move, I took a breath filled with resolution. Today marked not just a conflict for my father's inheritance, but a stand for our identity, my dignity, and my resolve to not let the betrayal chain me down any longer. The shadows may have clouded my life, but I was ready to step into the light. No longer would I be merely a daughter overshadowed by an absent father. I would reclaim the daughter who fought fiercely for what was right, a daughter unwilling to be silenced any longer. And so it began. The first breath of what would soon become my reckoning. I could almost hear the echoes of laughter from my childhood as I stood outside the creaky door of the estate that once was a haven, a sanctuary filled with warmth and light. Now, it loomed dark and foreboding, its very walls seeming to whisper tales of betrayal. My heart raced, pounding a relentless rhythm in my chest as I pushed the door open, the hinges protesting with a heart-wrenching squeal. Dust motes danced in the shaft of late afternoon sunlight filtering through the grimy windows, falling onto the once vibrant rugs that now bore the heavy patina of neglect. It felt surreal, stepping back into a place where I had played, where I had belonged. But under that heavy nostalgia lurked the raw reality of what my uncle and half-brother had led me to. A confrontation fueled by their greed and my thirst for justice. The air inside was cool, carrying with it the faint scent of old wood and the memories of family gatherings that had long since turned sour. I had planned every detail, rehearsed every word in my mind, yet as I stepped further in, a wave of unease crashed over me. To my left, the living room sprawled, its furniture covered with white sheets like ghosts waiting to awaken. I could almost see us, my father telling stories, my uncle's laughter ringing through the air, the warmth of shared meals. I shook my head, trying to dispel the ghosts of the past as I rounded the corner toward the dining room. I could hear them before I saw them. My half-brother's loud, arrogant laughter bounced off the walls, a sound so familiar yet so profoundly irritating. My uncle's gruff tone was intermingled with it, his voice slathered in false warmth as if he was still worthy of the title family. I took a deep breath to steady myself. Today was not about what was left of those memories. It was about reclaiming what was mine, restoring what my father had wished for us. With firm determination, I stepped into the dining room, where they casually lounged at the oak table, still polished but now bearing witness to their schemes. Look who finally decided to show up. My half-brother exclaimed, his smirk practically oozing disdain. Didn't think you'd have the guts to face us. I swallowed hard, forcing down the tight feeling in my throat as I raised my chin. Guts is not what I lack. What I lack is respect from you too, but that changes today, I declared, my voice trembling slightly but still defiant. Oh, respect, my uncle scoffed, leaning back in his chair with arms crossed, a mocking smile plastered across his face. What makes you think you deserve any? After all, you've been so conveniently absent from all family matters. Now you come crawling back just because there's something at stake. How touching. Each word felt like icy daggers, aimed directly at my heart. How could he twist my absence into something so vile? But I steeled myself. The very essence of my father's ideals surged within me like a protective shield. What you are doing is wrong, I pressed on, stepping closer to the table, my voice stronger now. You think I don't know the conversations you've had, the plans you've made to cut me out. This isn't just about an inheritance, it's about the legacy of our family. Legacy. My half-brother rolled his eyes, waving his hand dismissively. You think legacy means anything when you've been absent? You have no claim here. Not now, not ever. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, my pulse quickening, but rather than retreat, I leaned forward, forcing the strength I had gathered to shine through. You're wrong. I have every right to be here, and I have every right to claim what belongs to me. I'm not letting you walk all over my father's memory like it's one of your playthings. The tension in the room shifted, charged with unspoken words as they exchanged glances, the self-assurance slipping from their expressions. I came prepared for this moment. I pulled out the printed demand letter from my lawyer, its crisp edges contrasting sharply against the old table, mislaid with accumulated dust. This letter outlines my claim as an heir and the rights I have to this estate, I said, my hands steadying the paper even as it trembled slightly from the weight of what it represented. You need to understand that what you think is yours, what you believe is out of reach for me, is about to change. Not intimidated by your little paper, Alexandra, my uncle said, and there was a hint of anger in his voice as he quickly flicked the letter away, dismissing me with a wave. You think you can just come in here waving around a letter and expect us to quiver in fear? His attempt at bravado faltered slightly, and I felt a rush of adrenaline course through me. I pressed on, my voice unwavering. You can think whatever you want, but I have gathered evidence. I have recordings that show you colluding to keep me out of my inheritance. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. I have spoken to family members who are willing to testify to your deceit. For a moment, their silence felt heavy, a silence filled with the crackle of tension, as palpable as the dust motes suspended in the air. My half-brother's brow furrowed, uncertainty creeping into his demeanor as my uncle's bravado cracked under the pressure. Evidence, he spat, his voice rising in anger. What do you think you have? Nothing but empty threats. You'd be surprised at the lengths people will go for fairness when they see it trampled on. I shot back, feeling the embers of hope igniting within me. And I am no longer afraid of what you think you can control. I didn't raise you, our father didn't raise you to be this way, my half-brother sneered, his voice laced with disdain. That's right, you're just a shadow of what our family should have been, nothing more than a convenient body to take the blame for our father's failures. Those words cut deep, but I wasn't going to let them wound me. If I'm a shadow, it's because you have cast it over me. But shadows cannot be extinguished, and they can reveal the truth if they grow strong enough. You just don't get it, do you? My uncle replied, irritation lining his features. You think this is a game, it's not. You're wasting your time and effort. Family loyalty doesn't apply to you anymore. Who has been disloyal? I shot back, my hands now gripping the edge of the table. You think I haven't seen your manipulation, you and him together, plotting without even a glimmer of consideration for me. This isn't family, this is pure greed. Their confidence crumbled like old plaster at my words. I could feel the tide turning as my uncle's eyes darted nervously, while my half-brother's lips pressed into a furious line, disbelief radiating off him. I pressed further, my voice finding strength in the resolve that had been buried underneath years of doubt. You can't silence me anymore. If there is any truth left in the bond of blood, I will fight for it, and I will leave no stone unturned. I will not stand by while you take what was never yours. Suddenly, my half-brother surged up from the table, face flushed with rage. You have no idea who you're dealing with. His scream echoed through the bones of the house, his hands slamming down on the table. He looked like a cornered animal, a sudden surge of panic in his eyes showing just how desperate the situation had become for him. I didn't step back. Instead, I locked eyes with him, my gaze unwavering. No, I do not fear you. It's you who should realize you're not untouchable." His jaw clenched tight, and I could see the gears turning in his mind, trying to plot his next move. My courage flared, the words of my father reinforcing my stance. I was here because I deserved to be. "I would suggest you think carefully about how you proceed from here. An unyielding force is nothing compared to a righteous heart." The air hummed with tension as we stared each other down. I could sense their fear masked under bravado, the knowledge that I had turned the tables, that I was no longer just an afterthought in their machinations filled me with fierce exhilaration. I had reclaimed my voice in a world that had sought to silence me. In that moment, the past faded and the future emerged brightly on the horizon, a future where I would protect what was my family's legacy, and I would ensure that justice, if it had to be fought for, would be fought well. "Let's see how this plays out, then," my uncle finally retorted, defiance etched onto his features. I nodded slowly, a fierce determination burning in my chest. "You will see," I promised. "You will see how far I'm willing to go for what is rightfully mine." I turned on my heel, stepping away from the suffocating atmosphere and letting my heart surge with renewed purpose. Each step toward the door resonated with the rhythm of my fighting spirit, a spirit rekindled for the battle ahead. The house felt different now, the shadows less intimidating, the memories and truths unfolding like petals of a long-forgotten flower. The battle to reclaim my legacy had only just begun, and I was ready. No more shadows, no more concealment. Just the raw determination of a daughter, a rightful heir, ready to stand for what was just yet. As the first confrontation played out, the exhilaration that coursed through my veins began to fade, replaced quickly by a wave of doubt that crashed against my resolve. The air was thick, almost electric, charged with tension as their faces turned ashen not just from shock, but also from a simmering anger that radiated off my half-brother. He stood there, shoulders squared, fists clenched, exuding a confidence that felt like a hollow shield. To him, I was nothing more than an intruder bent on disturbing the life he had carefully constructed. "You think you can just come in here and ruin everything for me?" He spat, his words sharp and accusing, twisting the narrative until it felt like I was the villain in my own story. Behind him loomed our uncle, a lurking presence, the shadows he cast over family gatherings like dark clouds threatening a storm. I could feel his cold eyes watching me, almost savoring the chaos. My heart sank deeper, each beat mirroring the rising tide of insecurities. I had prepared for this moment, rehearsed it 1,000 times in my head, yet their laughter struck like a bitter wind, drowning my words before they could take flight. "Look at her, she thinks she can take us down," he jeered, his friends joining in, their laughter echoing off the walls, a cruel symphony that mocked the very soul of my existence. What was supposed to be a moment of clarity, of confrontation, crumbled like fragile porcelain beneath the weight of their mockery. "Are you even listening to yourself?" "This is pathetic," another voice chimed in, and it felt as if they were pulling me under, dragging me into a dark abyss where doubt ruled and courage flickered like a dying flame. I could feel despair seeping into my bones, pulling me down like quicksand. Would my efforts yield nothing? Did I truly think I could fight against the tidal wave of their combined arrogance? The plan I had meticulously crafted seemed to falter under their manic cheers of victory, the very air thick with disdain and condescension. I looked around in sheer disbelief. It felt like I was battling not just against them, but against the weight of my own insecurities. I closed my eyes for just a moment, fighting to find my center amidst their derision. I could feel the sting of tears waiting just behind my eyelids, threatening to betray me. I couldn't let them see me break. Not now. Not ever. And just when it seemed hopeless, a vibration broke through the fog of despair. My phone buzzed insistently in my pocket, a tiny beacon of light in the dark chaos swirling around me. My heart raced with a flicker of hope as I discreetly pulled it out, fingers trembling. It was a message from my lawyer, detailing additional evidence that I could present, a last-minute lifeline throwing itself into the ring. My breath caught in my throat as I read the words, and for the briefest moment, the laughter around me began to fade into the background, the tide turning ever so slightly. I clenched my fists, feeling the cool metal of my phone grounding me, the renewed sense of purpose flooding back into my veins. I gathered the remnants of my shattered faith and held fast to the knowledge I had gained. I was not finished just yet. My heart began to pound not with fear, but with a fierce determination that made my muscles tense, ready to stand firm against the tide that had threatened to sweep me away. I straightened my posture, rolling my shoulders back as I faced them once more. Their laughter faltered as they sensed the shift in the air, the unspoken challenge sparking between us. "You think I am trying to ruin your life? All I'm trying to do is unveil the truth," I said, my voice holding a steadiness that surprised me. "You, of all people, should understand what that means. After all, truths are meant to see the light, even if they do come wrapped in ugly packaging." My half-brother's face twisted as if I had struck him. The shock only made my resolve swell. I continued, letting my voice carry, imbued with clarity and conviction. "It is not just about you. Not everything is centered around your little world. There are consequences to your actions, and it's time the world sees them." I could see the lines of confusion knitting his brow, the arrogance faltering momentarily as surprise washed over him, and I seized that moment, feeling adrenaline surge through me. "You don't get to play the victim when your choices hurt others. I am not backing down." For a second, silence enveloped us, thick and palpable, swallowing their derision whole. But our uncle stepped forward, a dark specter of authority and arrogance. "You think evidence will change anything? What you have is nothing but foolish fantasies. You have no idea what you are meddling with," he said in a low, silken voice that held a thread of menace, seamlessly sliding back into his role of intimidator. "Family loyalty means standing together, not tearing each other apart. You should have come to us with your grievances, not turning to the courts like some publicity-starved child." The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I stared at him, a storm of emotions rolling inside me. How dare he twist the meaning of loyalty? "You call it loyalty, I call it manipulation," I challenged, refusing to back down. "Your reign of shadows ends now." Sparks of defiance flickered deep within me, pushing the fear into the corner of my mind. "You think because you're older and more experienced, that somehow makes you right. But I choose integrity over your feigned loyalty." I could see the disbelief in his eyes. It was almost thrilling to see the fear brewing beneath his surface. My half-brother interjected, "You don't know what you're doing. You are in over your head, and when you fall, it will hurt so much worse than you even imagine." He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he sought to intimidate, but I stood my ground, heart pounding in my chest yet fiercely alive. "Maybe, but I'd rather take that risk than carry the weight of your arrogance on my shoulders." The atmosphere had shifted, and I could feel the power dynamic realigning itself beneath our feet, the subtle tremors of dominance wrestling for control. With every defiant word I spoke, I felt like I was carving out a new path for myself, one laden with potential, amidst the debris of their sneers. "You will regret underestimating me," I warned, each syllable tasting like iron on my tongue. I was rising from the ashes, determined to forge my own destiny rather than simply yielding to the storm raging around me. But with each passing moment, I could sense that the tide would swell again if I did not make my exit. Their laughter threatened to drown out my voice entirely if I lingered in their tainted company much longer. I took a deep breath, centering myself, feeling the cool air fill my lungs and steady my racing heart. I had to regroup, had to get to that evidence, the vindication for my battles ahead. With the remnants of anger and hope flickering in my chest, I turned and began to walk away, the resolve coursing through me like a bright fire, illuminating the darkness I had briefly wandered into. "Where do you think you are going?" my half-brother called after me, a desperate sound tinged with frustration. But I refused to answer. Their words had begun to fade again, retreating like the tide as I focused ahead. I had come into this storm seeking justice, and though their faces twisted in mockery behind me, I would not succumb to their pessimism, nor let their arrogant cheers drown out the symphony of my own ambitions. This was just the beginning. I had found a way to rise above their chaos, and I vowed to return stronger, armed with renewed purpose and undeniable proof, ready to show them the truth they so desperately wanted to bury. The battle for my rightful place was only just beginning, and I would not let their shadows eclipse my light any longer than next meeting was set. It took place in a small-roomed office, filled with weary faces and the ghosts of family disagreements. The air was thick with unspoken words, and the shadows danced like memories in the corners of the room, etched with pain from years of discord. I could feel the very walls absorbing the strain like sponges. The scent of worn leather and stale coffee clung to everything, echoing the long hours spent deliberating over family matters that had twisted into a knot of greed and betrayal. My pulse quickened as I stepped inside, the atmosphere crackling with an electric tension that enveloped me like a storm just waiting to unleash its fury. My lawyer stood beside me, a steadfast ally dressed in a stiff suit, his demeanor calm yet alert, ready for whatever tumult lay ahead. As I stood there, I could almost feel the weight of our ancestors, their eyes boring into me, watching us from some ethereal dimension, demanding respect for our shared blood. Their whispers echoed in my mind, urging me to stand tall and courageous. Would I disappoint them, or would I rise to the occasion, holding the truth like a beacon against the darkness? With a deep breath, I summoned my resolve, knowing that this was a moment I had prepared for tirelessly. With the table set before us, my lawyer shuffled through his documents. Every rustle heightened my anticipation. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. I nodded, heart racing but mind clear. The time had come to unveil the evidence I had so painstakingly gathered. The documents included testimonies revealing the deceitful schemes of family members, designed to undermine our position as rightful heirs. I unrolled the printout, my fingers trembling slightly at the edges of the paper, as if I could feel the power of truth radiating from it. "Thank you all for gathering here today," I said, my voice steady, breaking through the heavy silence. "I stand before you with new evidence that warrants our urgent attention. This evidence is not merely a collection of words. It is the truth that has long been buried beneath layers of manipulation and lies." As I spoke, I could sense the gazes of my family shifting, the faces of my uncle and half-brother hardening with defiance. There was a palpable shift in the air, the temperature rising within the confined space, mirroring the heat of my anger and determination. I laid out the testimonies one by one, each statement a calculated strike against the fortress of deceit they had built. "You have all been blinded by self-interest. This," I slammed a fist onto the table, "this is not about family loyalty. This is about greed." With each revelation, my voice grew stronger, transforming my measured words into thunderous declarations of truth. I could see the shock and disbelief wash over their faces as I painted a narrative of manipulation that exposed them for who they truly were. Then it happened. My uncle, a man I had once regarded with respect and reverence, leaped to his feet, his expression contorted into a mask of primal rage. His face transformed before my eyes into a grotesque outline of fury that struck fear in the hearts of those assembled. "You want to take what is mine." He spat, the venom in his voice filling the air like poison. "You will regret this moment." The words seemed to reverberate against the very walls, igniting the tension like kindling to a fire. But fear was a tether I refused to grasp. I stood my ground, feeling a surprising surge of strength empower my stance, my heart thudding loudly in my chest. I was a bulwark against his tempest. "Uncle, this is not about what is yours," I replied, my voice rising above his anger. "This is about what is just. Our father's legacy, our family's dignity, is at stake here." As I held my gaze steady against his wrath, I could feel the ugliness of his demeanor become apparent to everyone in the room. Faces turned toward him, expressions shifting from sympathy to pity. My half-brother, usually so confident, appeared small and vulnerable in the wake of our confrontation. He stood there, isolated and exposed in the expected storm, disbelief etched into his features as his facade crumbled under the weight of truth. Was it fear I saw flicker in his eyes, or the glimmer of understanding slowly dawning? I aimed my words toward him, feeling the gravity of our shared lineage. "You claim loyalty to family, yet your actions scream betrayal. We have an opportunity to honor our father together. Instead of tearing apart the very fabric of what was left to us, we could unite to safeguard that legacy." My heart soared as I looked around the room, finally witnessing a shift in the atmosphere. People were realizing that there was something larger than ourselves at play here, each expression morphing into a reflection of shared history and memories that could still guide us forward. The truth was rising above the chaos, lifting like a phoenix reborn from the ashes of betrayal. My uncle's anger flared, but I could see it was beginning to fray at the edges with threads of fear. He had underestimated our collective bond, thinking he could divide us to claim his selfish prize. I held my breath as I caught my brother's eye across the table. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something real pass between us, an unspoken acknowledgement that perhaps the years spent apart had not severed our ties after all. A hush fell over the room, silence stretching long and taut between us. I dared to hope. "We can come back from this," I pressed gently. "We can rebuild the trust that has been shattered. We have the chance to forge a path that honors our family's name, rather than dragging it through the mud. The room seemed to shift as incredulity mixed with fear and curiosity. My uncle struggled to form a retort, the anger slowly draining away as the reality of the situation brimmed over him like cold water dousing a flame. "Your desires are naive," he finally managed, his voice shaking slightly. "You believe that unity can defeat the truth. My power, my position, they are not something that can be easily stripped away." His bravado waned, revealing cracks in the armor he had worn for years, and I was suddenly reminded that beneath that ruthless exterior was a man terrified of losing everything he had worked so hard to build. But I was resolute. "Your power comes from deceit, from fanciful illusions crafted in the dark. Truth will always expose the lies for what they are. Consider this the day of reckoning and look around you." I spread my arms wide, taking in the faces of our family, newly awakened, some skeptical, others hopeful. "For every deceit, you have forged chains that bind us, but those same chains can now bind you. We carry our father's legacy in our hearts. We honor it with our actions. Together, we can ensure that his name lives on in dignity, not disgrace." The words hung in the air, powerful and heavy. I could see the inner turmoil reflected on my brother's face as he struggled between the loyalty to our shared past and the reality of our present. I stepped closer, breaking the barrier constructed by fear and suspicion. "I am willing to set aside our differences if you are. Will you join me in reclaiming what is rightfully ours? Will you stand against him and for our father's memory alongside me?" For a moment, his eyes flickered with uncertainty. The silence enveloped us like a thick fog, and my heart raced, unsure whether the storm brewing inside would bring forth rain or sunshine. Finally, he nodded slowly, a gesture that felt monumental. It was the slightest movement, but one that held the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. My heart leaped at that flicker of understanding, the shared desire to reclaim our family's dignity, and I was overwhelmed by a rush of hope. Suddenly, the tension in the room shifted again, the air lightening as the weight of deceit began to fade, displaced by the collective strength of solidarity in our bond. The moment felt electric, charged with the shocking truth that we were no longer alone. We were standing on the precipice of something monumental, a collective tide that swayed against the currents trying to drown our truth. My uncle's face paled, the color draining as realization washed over him. In that moment, he had turned from tyrant to prey, barely clinging to the remnants of his once imposing presence. My voice softened, turning genuine as I reached out to him too. "It does not have to be this way. Let us not destroy each other for the past that cannot be undone. Together, we can forge a new future." The room was still, but now the atmosphere buzzed with potential rather than animosity. We had only begun this battle, but the tides were turning, our paths converging into one shared journey to reclaim what was lost. My heart hummed with the promise of victory. I saw the depths of our family's ties unfurling like petals of a blossoming flower as we stood on the verge of retribution. As the echoes of old wounds began to fade, I felt a renewed determination, a sense of purpose sharp as the cold winter air. That day marked the beginning of our victory, a potent acknowledgement of the path we were to tread, filled with bumps and obstacles. Together, we would step carefully through this terrain, forging forward against the storm we would face together, fueled by the undeniable truth that united us. We were family, and together, we would reclaim our rightful place. The dust began to settle after our final confrontation, leaving behind a landscape forged with newfound chapters and bonds stronger than before. The evening light cascaded through the windows, painting the walls of our childhood home in warm golds and browns, a stark contrast to the cold, tense shadows that had once loomed here. It was a space reborn, an arena where betrayals had once played out but now echoed laughter and shared stories. Justice may have prevailed, but the broader implications of what we achieved resounded like ripples across a pond. I could feel the weight of those ripples, swelling in my chest, as my twin and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table. "Do you remember that time he tried to take our inheritance before Dad passed?" I asked, laughter bubbling up out of me from a memory far too painful to stay buried. My brother chuckled, his eyes bright with mischief. "Of course I do. He was so sure we would just roll over. What a fool." The laughter faded slightly as we both remembered vividly the tears and turmoil that had followed our father's passing. His greed had nearly consumed us. "I don't think we ever would have imagined it would come to this, that we'd need to fight tooth and nail for what's ours," I said, running my fingers over the golden wood of the table, feeling the grains beneath my fingertips. Yeah, but look at us now, my brother replied, a soft smile creeping onto his face. We did it together. We showed him that we wouldn't just stand by while he tried to twist everything for himself. He leaned back in his chair, the image of a proud warrior, a sentiment solidified by the hard-fought battle we had fought. It was as if the entire situation had turned on its head, closing every door on his illicit schemes. Our community breathed a collective sigh of relief as the whispers of my half-brother's greed filled the air, shifting the focus away from our family and toward the legacy we intended to revive. My uncle, once a significant threat in the grand chess game our family had become, lost much of his maneuverability, his moves rendered futile as the truths became too glaring for even the most blind to ignore. I could picture him now, skulking in the corners of the town, unable to face the stronghold that my brother and I had now become. Win or lose, we were no longer the prey. We were the lions guarding our territory. Our lawyer stood by us in triumph throughout this process, his voice now resonating with authority, reforming the narrative of our family story from one steeped in betrayal to one full of resilience and determination. I could still hear his words from earlier in the day, a passionate speech that had struck a chord with everyone present. You fight for what is right. You have each other, and together you are unstoppable. I stood beside my brother, not just as siblings fighting for what was rightfully ours, but as warriors guarding our father's legacy with the fierce love and loyalty he had always hoped would bind us together. That love emanated from deep within my chest, and as I glanced at my brother, I could see it reflected in his eyes as well. There was something profound about our bond, an unbreakable thread forged in the fires of chaos and rebirth. The scars they left will fade but never vanish, I mused aloud, my gaze turned toward the window, where dusk was creeping in. Outside, the trees started to whisper their secrets in the breeze, a reminder that healing takes time yet can still allow for beauty in the scars. Yeah, but those scars are our story now, he replied warmly. They remind us of what we can endure together. I appreciated how effortlessly he turned pain into strength. Each day after felt like a new beginning, where the house once filled with family tension began to feel alive once again. I could hear the faint sound of laughter coming from the living room, where our friends had gathered to celebrate our victory, our table now brimming with good food and bright conversations. Can you believe this? Our friends came together and organized this celebration. They really are amazing, I grinned, feeling gratitude bloom within me. It signified something more than just triumph. It was a sign that we were not alone in this journey, that there were those who had believed in us when things had felt darkest. Of course I can believe it, my brother answered, shaking his head in disbelief, the corners of his mouth quirking upward. They know what we fought for. They are proud of us. In that moment, as I took note of how the bond we shared had evolved, I found solace and purpose. Though wary of old ghosts, I was determined to forge a future rooted in respect and love, free from the bitterness our uncle and half-brother had summoned. I glanced around our home, taking in the familiar sights tinged with newfound hope. Framed family photos lining the walls, the handmade decorations from childhood still hanging with pride, and the faint scent of our mother's favorite lavender candle flickering softly in the corner. The memories seemed less like chains now, and more like gentle reminders of where we had come from and where we were heading. As I stepped out into the world beyond the shadows of betrayal, I finally felt empowered. I took a deep breath, feeling the coolness of the evening air fill my lungs. You know, I said, breaking the stillness that filled the room, I think it might be time for us to finally plant Dad's favorite tree. You know he loved the oak, always talked about how it could weather any storm. A look of joy mixed with nostalgia swept over my brother's face as he picked up on my thoughts. I think that sounds perfect, a sign of strength and endurance. We can honor him by planting it right here in the yard, I suggested, my heart racing with excitement at the thought of transforming our home once again. A new beginning, a symbol of the legacy we're going to create without the bitterness and anger clinging to it. Let's do it then. What about this weekend? We can invite our friends, make a day of it, he proposed, his enthusiasm infectious. Absolutely. They would love that. We could share stories about Dad, talk about how much he loved the outdoors, and how he always wanted the oak tree to represent our family, I replied, a sense of determination washing over me as I envisioned our plans. As we made our plans, I felt a comforting sense of closure settling around me, cradling me in its embrace. The weight of the past was gradually lifting, and instead of feeling heavy, it was morphing into the foundation of our future. I thought about how far we had come, about the long, dark nights of fear and uncertainty, and how somehow, against all odds, we had emerged warriors. I never want to go back to that place of resentment, I confessed, my voice choked with emotion. I don't want to waste any more time feeling like we are constantly looking over our shoulders. We deserve our peace. He nodded, his expression resolute. We will create the life our father would have wanted for us, filled with laughter, love, and a little mischief here and there. The bond between us felt palpable, solid as the earth beneath our feet, and it forged the unshakable resolve within me that there would be no room for fear in our future. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in an array of fiery oranges and deep blues, I took one last look around the room, feeling the warmth of hope envelop me like a hug. I had not just reclaimed what was rightfully ours. I had resurrected the honor of my father's legacy and ensured that it would never be stolen again, fortified by the lessons we learned. Standing side by side with my brother, I had learned that fighting for family is a battle worth waging, that in the end, love conquers all.